Coming up on Oakdale Update, we'll talk about the Gateway Corridor with City Council member Paul REINKE, and we'll preview some upcoming events. Stay tuned. Oakdale Update is straight ahead. Hello and welcome to Oakdale Update. I'm your host, Frank Orsello. This is the City of Oakdale's news and information program about your community. The Gateway Corridor connects St. Paul to Woodbury, Lake Elmo, and Oakdale, and is a vital transit connection between urban, suburban, and rural communities. With me to talk about the Gateway Corridor is City Council member Paul REINKE. Paul, thank you for joining us on Oakdale Update.
Well, you're welcome, Frank. I appreciate the invitation.
We've got a lot to talk about in this Gateway. This is getting to be a very serious project, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's start off by telling me a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Frank. Carol and I have lived in Oakdale just a little over 20 years now, and I've been fortunate to be able to serve on the council for 3 terms. This is my 3rd term. Work-wise, I am a professional real estate developer, primarily commercial and apartments. And Carol and I have 1 son.
Okay, very good. And you live in Oakdale, right? Yes, you'd have to, right? Okay, so what is your tie to the Gateway Corridor?
Back in 2009, when the corridor was initiated and organized, I volunteered to be a member on the commission and be Oakdale's representative. All of the city council members have obligations and commitments and involvements on various things throughout the city and the Metro East Side, and this was a particular interest of mine. There were several things that that helped me do it. You know, all the development stuff that's coming, just the congestion of traffic is a killer. I unfortunately drive too much and get stuck in this traffic day in and day out, and so it was a really nice fit to be able to be on this commission.
Okay, so what is your position on this commission?
I'm a member.
Just a member? Okay, who chairs it?
The chair is Washington County Commissioner Lisa Wyke.
She's been active in this. I think I even had her on a program probably a couple of years back, so this has been going on for a long time, hasn't it?
This is over 5 years.
Okay.
And wow. The makeup of the commission is pretty interesting, because we really have 9 cities that the corridor goes through, and two counties, plus, so we have elected officials on the commission. We have representatives from the Met Council and also from the state sit in on the meeting. So our meetings of the Corridor Commission itself are about 15 people.
Wow. Where do you meet? Where do you have a spot big enough for, so everybody can get to it?
The Woodbury City Hall.
Woodbury City Hall.
And they've been gracious to allow us to meet there since almost from initiation.
You know, these are all pretty busy people. Are they able to continually make these meetings, or, you know, they come and go, I'm sure?
You know, we have great attendance.
Really?
It needs to be elected officials on the Corridor Commission component. And so there's been a little bit of change just as the elections take place. But I think the attendance is so good because of the high stakes that are involved in the project and high cost and implications for interrupting people's lives.
Absolutely.
And making it better, by the way.
Yes. All right, now, and I don't know, I don't need exact statistics, but you did mention that the traffic coming in from even Wisconsin and just all the whole East Metro area is so huge. I mean, it's coming in and going out. We know this. Every day it's the same thing, right? Yeah. And this is, I'm sure, is the impetus that got you going with the bus route, right?
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
And on that point is that many times there's kind of 2 ways that major projects come together. Either it's a solution looking for a problem, which is kind of a weird way of thinking about it, that people are out there trying to solve things that aren't really a problem, possibly, or there's a problem that needs a solution. In this case, the corridor transit component has problems, plural, and solutions. And so the problem comes from congestion. And I was amazed getting involved in this at a real good level of detail. I was astounded to think about 90,000 cars currently coming over the 94 River Bridge.
Wow.
It increases to 85,000 at the 694, 494 intersection, and then increases again as it heads into downtown St. Paul to 135 to 150,000 cars.
Jeez.
So that corridor is so critically important to the Metro East side, of course, but the whole region, and quite frankly, Milwaukee, Chicago, Eau Claire, Madison, all these other cities beyond our region.
So how long have you been studying this? For about 5 years?
Over 5 years.
Oh, okay, now what were some of the options? What are some of the options?
You know, in the options that we looked at, first, if I can, I should say that this process that we're following is a federal process. So it's not some harebrained thing that somebody locally came up or that I came up with or Commissioner Wyke or anybody else. But it's a federal process that's competitive. So there's a problem, and so in 2009, a group of people got together and said, let's try to solve it, let's try to figure it out, and look at the options for improving transportation. Transportation being both pedestrian, but also tonnage.
Sure.
An interesting fact, we just talked about the number of cars coming along 94. The potential, the suggested increase in tonnage, freight tonnage, is scheduled to increase 132% from 2008 up to 2030.
You're talking trucks and the
trucks hauling stuff. You know, Twin Cities specific, but we're a major thoroughfare from Canada going down to Chicago.
Wow.
So that tonnage is going to increase, and the amount of vehicles and the loads being carried through the Twin Cities is going to increase roughly over 130%. So when we looked at options, we really started large, and we said, okay, what's available? We have rail. There is commuter rail, and so that was an option. We looked at light rail transit, very similar to the options going on in the West Metro. We looked at something new called bus rapid transit, and then we also looked at bus rapid transit on its own, they call it the guideway. The first one, bus rapid transit, is very similar to a managed lane program. So running a specially outfitted bus down 94 from, say, Woodbury all the way into the Union Depot. We also looked at two other things.
Oh, excuse me a second. That'd be like just a special corridor, just like the shoulder of the road kind of thing. But you would have to allow for that, right? It'd cost you to do this.
Right.
You'd have to expand the road, right?
Right.
That's okay.
It expands the road, but it also, we found as we studied it, that it needs to move into the lane of traffic of 94 periodically.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, the other two things that we studied is doing nothing and just letting the system sit, which was also a federal mandated element that we needed to study. And then we did study they call it the managed lane process. So of all these things, again, we start large and we keep on narrowing down. After a certain point, we were able to use data and assumptions to say, too expensive, not enough riders.
Sure.
Doesn't impact the economic development potential, which is an element of the analysis. And so very quickly we deleted the idea of the commuter rail. We deleted the idea of light rail transit, primarily because of the cost, which is almost double what this bus rapid transit is scheduled to be.
When we talk cost, what are we talking?
Boy, Frank, if you can believe that the light rail transit was scheduled for almost $900 million on a 12-mile section. And the amount of riders that we have, we just couldn't justify it. So that, as intriguing and as attractive as it is, we couldn't afford it.
Sure.
And so we came to a solution or a mode of transit, they call it, which is called bus rapid transit. Okay,
and what would the cost of that be approximately?
Currently, we're anticipating around $500 million.
$500 million.
So roughly half of what the light rail transit might have been.
Now, I guess I should clarify. Where is this route running from? Lakeland, you said? It starts in Lakeland, or where is it?
Yep. Think about Union Depot. We'll start downtown St. Paul at that beautiful depot station that Ramsey County has recently completed the renovation of. And that is one of the hubs, so that is the hub for the St. Paul area. And That has the light rail transit, that has normal bus operations, it's going to have rapid bus operations, it's got bike, it's got vehicle, it's got the intersection of all these different modes of transportation. So think about that and then head east. The easiest way is to think about 94, going up the Kellogg Bridge and then hop it on aligned with Highway 94 heading east, eventually terminating out in Woodbury at somewhere around the Manning Street Bridge.
Okay. That's 12 miles? Is that 12
Roughly
miles?
12 miles.
About 12 miles, okay.
And we're thinking about currently 11 stations. That's a component that is important as we analyze this thing.
Sure.
Is how do we make it, it's so expensive, so how do we make it as appealing and as attractive and easy for people to use it? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we looked at was enhancing the existing rapid bus system, mm-hmm. or the express bus system. Mm-hmm. That sure is doable, and the Met Council is going to be expanding that anyways, in addition to whatever we come up with. But at the end of the day, we have to be conscious of these costs and make sure that our decisions are leading to the best utilization as we can.
Mm-hmm. Now that rapid transit, I go by Guardian Angels Church,
yep.
where they have the big parking area,
yep.
and it seems like they can't put any more cars in there.
No.
So it's a very successful endeavor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, that park and ride is about 92%, 93% full on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And the future park and ride that is planned through the Metropolitan Council is out by the Manning and 94
yes.
area. And we're not anticipating that it's going to relieve too much of the existing one at Guardian Angels.
Well, isn't it kind of basically the same thing, though, isn't it, really?
Keep going, I'm not sure.
Well, is the park and ride, I mean, you get on a bus and it takes you into downtown St. Paul.
Yeah.
This project you're talking about is going to happen maybe out further east, yeah. but you get on the bus and it goes into downtown St. Paul.
Yes. Great question. And the issue becomes, one of the issues becomes frequency of service. And so as a business owner, and if I'm going to have employees,
sure.
and hopefully, people will want, of course, to work for me. But at that point, the employees and employers need to have a high state of assurance that it's going to be on time, mm-hmm. and it's going to be frequent, and my employees can get back and forth as needed. Think about the manufacturing outfits, especially as the times continue to get better, is that the hours might be second shift, third shift. Currently, the express bus
sure.
is the morning rush hour
sure.
and the evening rush hour, but nothing in between. So when we contemplated the bus rapid transit, one of the elements that we believe is important is that having this dedicated guideway, so its own lanes outside of 94 or outside of local roads, is important because of the timeliness piece. Mm-hmm. And so as business owners, you're a business owner and you want your employees to show up on time. 3M, Securian, Emation, all these large employers that we rely on, plus all the smaller businesses, need to have their employees arrive on time. And having this dedicated guideway and high frequency going all the way to almost
sure.
midnight.
Sure.
And I think we're projected to start at 6 o'clock going through midnight is critically important.
So you could almost call this a very, very dedicated bus service. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
In fact, a beautiful illustration would be the University of Minnesota Transitway. So it's got its own guideway. It's taken the kids back and forth
sure.
to the campuses, but it's high frequency, dedicated, so it's not being impacted by snow, traffic lights, congestion, and people can get where they need to get
sure.
quickly.
Now, this park and ride, they are subjected to the same problems as commuters are, aren't they? I mean, if there's a traffic accident or if there's a snowstorm, that
yep.
kind of thing.
And that element is one of the key reasons why we've been so insistent as a commission that as we look at this, it has to be reliable and timely. Right now we're projected to have 5,000 bus boarders in 2030 on this new line. That's not taking anybody out of the express bus, but it's new people riding this line. If those people can't rely on the timeliness and know that it's going to be, call it 20 minutes to get downtown St. Paul, we're going to fall off.
What good is it then?
And you know how that rumor mill starts,
Sure.
or the momentum. When we have positive momentum of timeliness and a high level of service frequency, we're going to attract riders. As soon as we start missing that, or
Sure.
the line starts missing that, we're going to fall off, and it's very hard and expensive to bring back riders after really receiving a negative
Sure.
reputation.
Now, you know, are you doing this in conjunction with the Metropolitan Transit Authority, as in the bus companies? Is that
Yes,
correct?
we certainly are.
You are. You have to be involved with them.
And with the commission, the Met Council representatives are present at every meeting. We have representatives from the state. We have representatives from the federal. So state Senator Wigger's office appears sometimes. From the federal level, Congresswoman McCollum's local office
Really?
person sits in on the meetings almost every time. There's a representative from Senator Franken's office and a representative from Senator Klobuchar's office.
That was going to be one of my questions is, well, it is. Who was in favor of this in terms of like 3M and in some companies downtown, Ecolabs or whatever? Who's all in favor of this?
In general, the large firms are in favor of it. Think about 3M. Numbers that I've been shared with, or numbers that have been shared with me, is that there might be 14,000 retirements, changeovers over the next certain period of time. And as that new group of people come that want to work for 3M, you know, it's different than you and I. You and I grew up in the vehicle days, and we had our own vehicle. Sometimes each of the brothers or sisters had one, so the families had many, many cars. Currently, today, there's about 65,000 people along the line that don't have vehicles. That's going to increase. When I talked to my son Adam about this project, he gets excited about it because he is very in awe of and willing to take mass transit. When he went to school at Augsburg College, he regularly rode the light rail out to the mall or out to the airport.
So young kids are more attuned to it than we are.
You bet. And they're attuned to it. They appreciate it. They don't have to spend money to have a car.
Sure.
And they can just take the mass transit.
Okay, now there's an organization called the East Metro Strong. Tell me a little bit about that.
East Metro Strong is a superior group. And I say it's a superior organization, because of the current leadership of Will Schroer. And then the participation of that, in that group, is these cities, counties, and businesses, for-profit, non-profit, governmental, that think transportation is important. I never sensed from Will, from the early conception of this commission, that it had to be a certain mode. You know, he wants light rail, or they want light rail, or transit, or whatever. They want effective transit to help their businesses and the Metro East Side grow, thrive, and be productive.
Sure.
As we've narrowed down, Will and his members on the association, or his organization, have helped us deal with some of the issues that we're facing. Example, if I can, one of the issues is pinch points. There's several pinch points along the path that there's just not enough room between 94 and Hudson Boulevard, let's say. One perfect example is down by Tanner's Lake and the Harley-Davidson business. Very successful business, very well run, you know, kind of the a class act. And so what's going to happen with that, and how we are coming up with solutions, or how solutions are being generated to keep him in business and not take away his parking, and in fact help him thrive while still being able to provide a means to get these buses through that area, is important. And Metro East, Metro Strong, has been helpful in generating ideas and working with us to come up with solutions.
They're a little more representing businesses, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Make sure that the business don't, well, like you said, go belly up because of putting a road in and cutting their business off and that sort of thing. Okay, now I know you said you had about 500 meetings off and on over the last 5 years. I'm assuming you've met with the local citizenry, and what kind of response are you getting?
You know, it's all over the board. The the response is positive as we're broad, because the idea of transit to the Metro East Side to in comparison to what's going on in the West Metro with the light rail transit, Cedar, Hiawatha, there's really nothing except express buses on the Metro East Side. So the notion of transit, very high, and people are in favor of it. Recently, as we've come up with what we call the preferred alignment, which is the general alignment of where we think makes sense for this corridor to go, people have gotten concerned. And the concern can come from not having accurate information, but it's also from not having information. And so the open houses, the press releases, the extension of specific meetings through the Chamber of Commerce, through newsletters, through social media, all of a sudden takes on a new light because now it's going to impact people's lives. So there was several meetings recently over the last 3 or 4 months where there was pretty much of a concern about access. So if it's going to happen on 4th Street, example, how is access handled either through the senior housing facility, Oak Meadows, or on the north side, the townhome community? And it's those type of things that I encourage, and I was at the meeting that we had at the Oak Meadows senior housing facility. I've been meeting with a smaller subsets of groups resulting from that meeting over the last 2 months. And as we get more information, that's the information I'm sharing.
Sure.
One of the issues that personally I have with this project is that it's so big and it's a process, a federal process that we're following, that I can't get my hands around specific details and answers to my questions or the City Council of Oakdale's questions. Likewise, that's many of the questions that residents have.
People, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's access, it's noise, it's commotion, it's congestion, it's parking, it's how do we pay for this. So we continue to get more specific, and you know, I mentioned payment for this. It's very expensive. It's $500 million in that ballpark, but some people think that it's going to be coming out of a line item on Oakdale budget, or it's going to be an additional cost that all of us will have to pay. Fact is that it's currently being collected. There's no money coming from an Oakdale line item budget. There's no money coming from Woodbury or any other city, and it's being funded by the CTIB, which is the County's Transportation Initiative Board. Remember that quarter-cent sales tax that was passed, I want to say 6 years ago?
Yes.
That is the pot of money that much of this cost is coming from, that's currently in place. The other pots that this money is coming from is the federal government and the state government. Now, nobody's kidding anybody to say that that's not our money.
Yeah, absolutely.
The point that I try to make with my conservative friends and everybody else is that, look, the money is going to be spent. It's already collected.
Just where
it
we're
is going to be
spend it.
collected.
Sure.
So my job from Oakdale is first, Oakdale, make sure that this is as high quality and as positively impactful to Oakdale as we can. And then secondly, on the whole Metro East Side, be sure I don't have my blinders on and do something, make a dumb recommendation that'll not benefit the whole Metro. But it's really those two initiatives, or those two important elements that I try to keep in mind. Okay.
Well, Paul, we are out of time right now, but I want to thank you for this, and I want to thank you for taking as much time as you have. I know just being on the council is a lot of time involved, but I'm sure this is just another piece of the pie taken out of your life and your wife and the kids and everything else, right?
Well, thank you. It is a big time commitment and an important one.
Well, thank you for doing it.
Like it.
You're on top of it, so we got to give you credit for that. Okay. And we'll see what happens now. We've got a lot more coming down the road, okay?
You know, good point, because it is another 2 years before we get to the pre-development stage.
The real nitty-gritty.
So it's a lot of detail that has to come together.
Well, good for you. I'm glad you're doing it. You're doing a fine job.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's time for a short break, but first here are some code reminders. Dispose of unwanted medication, which can be prescription, over-the-counter, and pet medicine too, at North St. Paul City Hall during regular business hours. Their City Hall is located at 2400 Margaret Street. And finally, on Trash Collection Day, Place trash and recycling containers on the driveway, back from the curb line, just prior to 7 a.m. It's time for a short break. We'll be right back with more of Oakdale Update in just a minute.
This month, I'm pleased to welcome Ellen Richter, the new city manager of White Bear Lake. Prior to Ellen's appointment, she was an administrator with the city for a number of years, so she brings a distinct understanding of the dynamics of our city. Again, I want to welcome Ellen Richter. We will discuss some of the major priorities facing the city of White Bear Lake, all on Your Business Matters.
We're just about out of time, but before we go, make sure you discover the Oakdale Indoor Market. It takes place at the Discovery Center at 4444 Hadley Avenue. It's the perfect place for all of your shopping. You'll find baked goods, jams, sweets, meats, gourmet foods, jewelry, and much more. The remaining indoor markets are January 16th and 30th, February 13th, and March 12th and 26th from 9 a.m. to noon at the Discovery Center. That's all we have time for this month on Oakdale Update. For everyone at the City of Oakdale, thanks for watching.